China marked 80 years since Japan's defeat with a huge parade in Beijing, attended by the leaders of Russia, Iran and North Korea, raising big questions about global alliances. For more, let's head to Sydney. We're joined by Professor Tim Harcourt, Chief Economist at UTS, the host of the Airport Economist channel right here on Ticker. Tim, good to see you. Why does Beijing credit the CCP when it was the nationalist forces that, of course, defeated Japan?
Yeah, well, that's a important historic point. Of course, it was the nationalists, the KMT, that defeated Japan. Apparently, the CCP forces were, on the fringes of rural China at the time, waiting for that war to be over. And then once the nationalists had, of course, lost 3 million soldiers or so, then the CCP attacked in the Civil War, and the nationalists had to flee to Formosa, which we now call Taiwan. So remarkable, they're actually celebrating the win by the nationalists, not the CCP.
Such a good point, and one that not many people really mentioned last week as it was happening. Kind of ignoring that history, aren't they? Just as we know that they see Taiwan as fully part of China there too. What message do you think China was sending to the world about this parade?
Look, I think it was trying to show, obviously, its military might and its armed forces and it's the technology that they have on display, in the same way that the old Soviet Union used to, have rockets go past the Politburo. I think there's something about world leadership and alliances. I think there's a view that they were saying, look, we've got Russia, we've got Iran, we've got North Korea, of course, and I mean they even had Prime Minister Modi visit a short time before. So I think there's a view that, in this world of chaos with the Trump administration and the tariff wars and the fights with NATO and the alliances, that China, like us or hate us, we're very stable, and these world leaders, dictators or not, they're here.
As you mentioned, we're used to seeing these sorts of parades in North Korea forever, from the Soviet Union and now Russia as well, which they call their VE Day parade. But the United States has been getting in on the action too. President Trump turning Washington into a parade only a few months ago, and now the Department of War too. What do you think this all says about the direction we're heading into?
Yeah, it's quite symbolic. You didn't have big military parades in Washington traditionally. I mean, America used to win wars, but they didn't quite do that, parade style type shows of strength. But so that's quite different. And also, as George Orwell used to say, changing names does mean something. So I think in George Orwell's books, the Ministry of Defence was the Ministry for Peace, but Trump's been a bit more honest and called it the Ministry for War, which is a little bit chilling when you think of the geopolitical tensions in the world at the moment.
Well, but that's the issue about these weapons that we saw streaming through Tiananmen Square. Was the idea from China is this is all about peace, and yet still we're seeing a massive build-up. GDP basis though, China is nowhere near the United States and actually behind Australia.
No, that's right. I mean, for all these parades and so on, China's still got a long way to go. And also, even militarily, I mean, you saw that strikes, you and I both saw those strikes on Iran by the US. I mean, clearly, the United States is well ahead. And I think that's why a lot of American allies who have been, a little bit shaken by the instability of the Trump presidency are now sort of coming on board and lifting defence spending like they're doing in Europe and in Japan. So I think there was a view that you can say what you like about the US and its current leadership. Militarily, they're still the leading force, and that's why people are getting with the strength. And China's trying to counter that by, of course, inviting the autocratic leaders of Russia and Iran and North Korea to Beijing.
Yes, let's talk about them. As you mentioned, North Korea with Kim Jong-un there. You had Iran, you had Russia with Vladimir Putin there as well. There's another gentleman we'll talk about later on in the program who was also there representing the state of Victoria. But when you have a look at these countries that were there, Narendra Modi wasn't there, last minute decision not to attend. it's BRICS getting together, but what really could Kim Jong-un offer China? It's the other way around. Same with Russia. Russia's been completely depleted of manpower to the point that they're needing help from Iran with drones and manpower from North Korea as well. This might have been seen as I guess, force, but it doesn't really appear to be that way behind the scenes.
Yeah, it's interesting. Would those leaders go to Moscow for a military parade led by Putin if he could have one? And yeah, I mean, you're right about North Korea. They're very reliant on China and indeed Russia. I mean, Russia's been using North Korean soldiers in the war against Ukraine. I mean, who would have thought that was a necessity, 20 years ago or 10 years ago? So that's concerning for Russia. And Iran's been depleted. I mean, the regime's on its last legs. So when you think about it, is China getting the strongest nations in the world at their parade? Well, not really. And if anything, all those nations are very dependent on Chinese goodwill, and a lot of it's very transactional, as we saw with the Cold War with the Soviet Union and China. They can turn on each other pretty quickly.
How much was this for President Xi about showing off to the rest of the world compared to showing a domestic audience that the regime is strong?
Oh, I think it's domestic. I mean, look, we talk about dictatorships and not having the vote and so on, but they still have to get the public on side, either through economic prosperity, growing the middle class, which is what the Communist Party's been able to do in China for a long time now, or fear, or scaring them, showing that look how strong we are, and using social credit and those types of things to clamp down on the population. And at the end of the day, I mean, for all the criticism of President Trump by the American media, it's probably better to have a media criticising you than one that's compliant, because that probably hides discontent domestically often.
And we all know about that. Speaking of domestic discontent, what did you think of former Victorian Premier Dan Andrews being present at the event? We all saw, this image right here, and there he is up the top right for those who haven't seen the image yet. And for those who are watching Ticker from around the world, to understand Dan Andrews has been a hugely divisive figure in Victoria after world-leading COVID lockdowns, but many, many other things as well, often referred to as Dictator Dan by the domestic media here. My favourite, I think, quote that summed this photo up, I don't know about you, and I'm sorry to be flippant here, Tim, but I stand with Dan, was my favourite comment for this image.
Yeah, well, it's amazing that Dictator Dan was a bit of a Aussie larrikin label, but there he is with a bunch of them.
Do you think he secretly would regret this?
I'm not sure. I mean, global audiences would be interested to learn that when China had the Belt and Road project, Australia, of course, wouldn't sign it because they thought it was military aggression. And
but Dan did.
The state of Victoria signed it. I mean, and this is a provincial premier signing a foreign policy, instrument, which you're not supposed to do really. And so he's got form, I guess, as the elected premier. Now he's retired from politics, so he's a free citizen. But I think it's one thing doing business in China, like Andrew Robb has done, the former trade minister, Bob Carr, the former New South Wales premier, and even Paul Keating and Bob Hawke have been.
Well, Bob Carr was there, but decided at the last minute not to attend the event. What do you think that says about judgment?
Yeah, well, a rare showing of good judgment by Bob Carr lately, and probably something that Dan Andrews should have followed, because it's one thing doing business and opening up doors, and it's another thing going to a military parade and sort of endorsing the regime. Now, maybe he doesn't care, but to a global audience, I mean, to have a former provincial premier, in a state government that is not even involved in foreign policy, sort of seemingly endorsing the Communist Party and the regime is quite unprecedented for Australia.
All right, we'll leave it there for now. Appreciate your insights as always. Professor Tim Harcourt from UTS, host of the Airport Economist channel right here on Ticker. We'll talk soon.
Thank you, Ahron.